Alright, welcome to everyone watching this video. If you're a sophomore or junior still currently enjoying computer science, I have an update for you on the project. So we've spent about one day in the class so far, and a lot of you are getting to the stage where you are going to have to move past typing in all of your motion functions, move past all of typing in your energy functions, and actually get to the part where you've got to configure your questions in the right way so that you can produce the effect that you want. Now currently I've been working on it and I've gotten one of the functions to work, so that means if one of the functions work, then I can make all of them work. So let's just see it come to life really quickly, and then I'll talk about some of the technical challenges that you'll have to incorporate to make that possible. So right now, as you can see, I'm already accessing the junior final. So if I say node and that's called physics, we can run the program. So since it's trying to figure out what type of physics we want, the two answers you could enter would be motion or energy. I've only enabled motion so far. Of course, in the motion section, as you saw over here, we could choose distance, velocity, acceleration, or time. I've only made distance work, so I'm going to use D. And then now notice that it's given me three new instructions. It says, please enter the variables that you know in a comma list. If you do not know a variable, then type null. And the way that I want you to type it is distance first, velocity second, acceleration third, etc., etc. You can read there. So if I'm calculating distance, that means I do not know distance, hopefully, otherwise you're wasting your own time. Let's say the velocity is 20 meters per second. Let's say I do not know the acceleration. I know that it's going to take me about 5 seconds, and the mass and the energy are no longer useful. So if I hit enter, it'll say, yeah, if you traveled 20 meters for 5 seconds, that's 5 times 20, aka it should travel 100 meters. Let's do the other version of it. So if I say node physics, let's just actually type that out. What equation do we want? We want motion. I want distance. But this time we're going to use the other equation, the one that uses acceleration, time, and velocity. So again, I do not know distance. This time let's just keep it at 20. So the initial velocity is 20. Let's say the acceleration is 2. So every second I go 2 meters per second faster. And let's have this go over 5 seconds again. So if I were to predict using some insight, since this problem has acceleration, I should get a bigger number than 100. And in fact, I get 125 meters. So let's talk about some of the things that I had to work differently to make this happen. But as I said, if you can get it to work for one function, you can get it to work for all of those functions. So one thing I said to you guys in lecture was your function needs to know, or I should say your program rather, needs to know how it's going to end. And since the terminal is what I'm calling that window, it's just as simple as saying terminal close. Well, rather than writing that out, roughly 50 times or so, I mean, not exactly 50, but probably closer to 20 times, you can just use the word end instead. But it is a function. So if you want your process to stop, you can just say end parentheses, and the program go ahead and it quits itself. So again, after I printed out 125 meters, you'll notice it gave me another command prompt, meaning it was done, and it asked me to do something else. You'll also notice, like I said, there are these 3 instructions right here. Well, every time you ask yourself a physics question, you're going to need to input some information. So I made this function called print options, and it gives you all 3 of those commands just so that the user knows how they want to type something in. And this is really the key to how I got it to work, that it's actually quite difficult, not impossible, but definitely more difficult if you try to figure out how to type in as few things as possible. But if you type in all 6 options and just say that some of those options don't matter, In other words, type in an N or a null. It doesn't really matter what. It'll just go ahead and it won't factor that into your equation whatsoever. And this by far was the most interesting thing when I was trying to get the program to work. So let's go back to the terminal here. It has to do with what we see and what the computer sees. So let's clear this up. Okay, so node physics. Oh, that's silly. I have to complete the phrase. All right. So right now it's asking me a question. And even if I type in the number 5, it's going to think that that's the string 5. Even if I type in the Boolean true, it's going to think that that's the string true. So no matter, whenever you ask it a question, even if you think it's a certain type of variable, it's always going to imagine it's a string. So when I said motion, well, of course motion is a string. When I said D, of course D was a string. But when it asks me to type in a list, normally you would think the computer would imagine that it's an array. But even if I were to type in the brackets like this, and please don't type in the brackets, but even if you were to type in the brackets, it would think that that entire thing is a string. A string with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 characters long. So what I did was I performed a little bit of magic. And here I taught the computer how to convert that string to an array. So instead of it just calling it string for str, I called it string comma. So the first thing it does is it looks for all of those commas and it will split it into an array. And then what it'll do is it'll go through the entire list, and if it sees something there, it'll try to convert it into a number. So it takes that entire string, chops it up into some pieces, turns each piece into a number, and then you're able to use those numbers. The cool thing is that if you try to turn n, or if you try to turn null into a number, it's not going to work out. So that's how the program is able to tell which variables you're allowed to use and which variables you're not allowed to use. If you typed in a string that is a number, then it'll turn into a number. But if you typed in anything else that isn't a numerical character, then it'll turn into something called not a number, aka nan. So thank you for listening to this little update. Again, I've provided all of those functions here inside of Helper. So you can just cut and paste these as you need, and I will talk to you tomorrow.